Many of you probably already know me. I'm Ben from LEADER. I've got Yung here, our new trainer.
Hi, everyone.
And we've also got David Nichols from Central Coast Grammar. He also runs the EDU Guy IT blog online, which focuses mainly on education. Yeah, we'll just unmute David. David, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, how are we going? So we just give it a few more minutes because there's about 200 registered and we've got 63 on the call now. So let's give it 2 or 3 more minutes and then we'll get started. If you have any questions, there is a chat box in GoToWebinar. So down on the right-hand side, you can click on the chat box. You can also post questions, and we'll get to those as we get through the webinar here. So, you know, if you've got any questions, whatever, just yell out in the chat window, and when we get to the Q&A, we'll unmute you so that you can ask some questions, and we'll go from there.
Also on the right as well, there's a handout section. There's a couple of PDFs with some case studies that we're going to discuss during the presentation, and I will distribute links with data sheets to all the products that we talk about after the webinar by email.
All right. 67. All right, we'll give it 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Can everyone hear us okay? Can we get someone to just post in the chat window that it's coming through loud and clear? Audio's all right?
I can hear you, but I may not be a helpful person to say that.
One would hope if you can hear us okay, everyone else can.
You would hope.
Yeah, hi, Alan, you had a question. Alan? Oh, okay. Yeah, audio's fine. All right, perfect. Okay, all right, let's get started. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah, David, screen's showing up all right?
Yeah, I can see the screen. I just can't see the questions.
No, that's fine. Okay. All right. So so thanks everyone for coming. So we're just going to we'll get started. I'll go through the first section. Young's going to go through some technical, more in-depth training in terms of the actual unified platform and how you can utilize that in an education setting. And then we're going to hand over to David Nichols, and he's going to go through his real-world, hands-on experience with the unified platform and how it compares to other vendors. What the pros and cons are, the concerns and benefits, okay? So if you're not familiar with Ubiquiti, Ubiquiti is now the #2 wireless access point brand globally in terms of volume. That's as of this year. So, Unify offers the total end-to-end solution from routing, switching, wireless, and point-to-point solutions. So unlike most networking vendors out there, they don't offer the total solution. So they don't go all the way from backhaul to CPE to, enterprise networking all the way through to consumer. So Ubiquiti is quite unique in that way. And they do define themselves as a software company first and a networking company second. So if you're familiar with Ubiquiti, or if you're not, or if you're a school looking to deploy Ubiquiti, one of the key elements of Ubiquiti and Unify in particular is the software is so easy to pick up, learn, and start deploying. So, whereas before with many other vendors, you would have to go through extremely complex certifications, and a lot of it is CLI based, you can actually do about 90% of what you need to in an enterprise network with the unified SDN controller. Right, it's very, very powerful. It allows you to go from 0 to 100 very quickly. Allows you to do most of the critical changes that you would require, or the config for a typical network. And then, the rest of the other 10%, we've got the engineers here to support you in that. Okay. And, they have an enterprise solution that's free of licensing and support contracts. Very unique in the industry is that, licensing, there is none of that from Ubiquiti side. And in terms of support, we're going to go over that later. LEADER offer that to our resellers. We also offer that to schools, but we will only do that through a reseller. So if we're dealing with a school, it has to be through a registered leader dealer, and then we will actually offer that pre-sales engineering with the reseller in the loop. If there is config or other technical issues that occur after deployment, we're here to support those schools directly. David will go through that as well, and he'll attest to that. Central Coast Grammar actually worked through a reseller called Somerville, and that is the way we work. We sell through a reseller, we support the school, and we support the reseller as well if they require that, and then that way we can get customers up and running fast. We can offer the fastest support, and that's all free. Okay, and we'll go through that. And we have a cost-effective enterprise-grade solution for small to large education scenarios. So we're going to go through. We've got schools that have done 10 access points, and then we go all the way up to David's example where they literally deployed. It was one of the largest education deployments for Unify globally, with over I think it was 70.
Over 150 APs and well over 50 switches. Yeah.
So David's gone through all the teething issues and learned quite a lot, and he's the best one to give you feedback if you have any concerns. If any of the schools you're speaking to have concerns, we can address those. Okay. So when we look at our competitors, so our main market we're competing with is Aruba, Cisco, Ruckus, and Aerohive. Okay. Ubiquiti offers an average of a 50 to 70% saving when we compare to these vendors, right? Now, within the case study for Central Coast Grammar, it was actually when they did their 6-month trial with many of these vendors, they actually said that Ubiquiti performed equal to or better than most of the other vendors that they tested. Okay, and that was after 6 months of testing. So that wasn't just a 1-week test and then they made that decision. That was extensive testing in a real-world environment. And Unify offers a solution with advanced features, no licensing, no support fees, and a low-cost deployment. So you get all the benefits and you get the same experience that you would expect from these access points. Some of these have advanced features, but the most common feedback we get is it really worth a 300% markup for BLE tracking or other features like that? And it is possible to utilize unified wireless APs with existing infrastructure. Okay, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Now we're going to compare some education quotes here. Now this is for a large-scale deployment for a university, a TAFE, or a college, right? So we've actually gone out and we've done some market research, and we found that competitor pricing for education range from $240,000 all the way up to $450,000, where a Ubiquiti solution comes in at $140,000. Now that's excluding licensing as well. So when you consider those other vendors, you've got to consider that there is licensing fees and support contracts ongoing, where Ubiquiti is just a flat rate. What you see is what you get. There's no licensing and there's no support fees. Okay. So we come in at 140,000 when we compare this typical network, and we can also offer 3 to 5 year extended warranties, which is backed up by LEADER. Okay. And that's advanced replacement. David will talk about, I think we've had one access point and one switch that's had an issue. We advance ship those devices out to the school same day. Within 2 hours, he's got a replacement unit that he can swap over. The other unit comes back, and we just basically give the reseller Somerville a credit. So our warranty process that we offer is designed to be extremely fast and extremely simple. And especially when we're talking about schools, it's got to be fast. It's got to be advanced replacement. We offer that for free. Most other vendors will make you pay for that advanced replacement service. Okay, we will offer that for free every day of the week for any education, any school that we deal with. Okay, and the AC EDU that we're going to go through provided a PA solution integrated with a wireless AP that no other competitor has. No one has this. Okay, so this is industry leading. Very, very, it's a very unique design that no other vendor has. And if you were to try and compete with this, you've not only got to sell the access points and the network infrastructure that these vendors are offering, but also you've got those costs of installing a separate PA system. There is no solution on the market that is integrated. Okay. Now, when we talk about the value proposition, we talk about all the features. I would recommend everyone to go to ubnt.com/y-unify and have a look at each of these points. When you click on each of these, it'll break it down and it'll actually show you Ubiquiti compared to Cisco and Aruba. I recommend having a look at that website if you've got any doubts or if you're trying to, obviously if you're speaking to any school, go through those points. That is an amazing resource for you. Okay. Now, we want to talk about ease of access and learning. So, at LEADER, when we talk about our resellers, we believe that training and, giving our resellers knowledge is the first step in the process of actually deploying these solutions. So unless we actually provide you with the training and the knowledge to actually go out there and sell this, you're not going to be able to sell it. And we're not going to be able to, obviously support that as well. So, we're actually launching this new website called LEADER Academy, which is going to be a dedicated training resource for resellers. To access the training content on this site, you need to be a LEADER reseller and you need to log in. So it is not a public-facing website. Actually, the training content is not public-facing, but the website is. Okay, and we're going to have video training modules with exams and certifications, and we've actually already started developing that content. We've got various modules which are free to access available on there right now. We've got modules relating to unified basic configs, and we have exams up there as well. So once you register, you can access those modules. And we also do certification classroom training Australia-wide. So I'm not sure if anyone here is actually certified, but Yung joined us about 3 or 4 weeks ago. One of the fastest to actually get his UCT cert. He passed with 97%. He went to Melbourne. He's done his Melbourne class, and now he's going on a national tour. And we're also going to be sending him to Darwin, Canberra, and Tasmania eventually. So if you're from those areas, we are coming there, and we're going to try and we're also going to try and do north in Queensland as well. So we're really trying to get out to those regional areas where it's very difficult for you to come into the city, and we want to go all over Australia and try and bring that training to you. Okay? And we also have this online technical resource to help guide you. So that will be part of the LEADER Academy. And if many of you are probably part of our Facebook group, but you'll know, if you're one of those 650, you know how valuable that is. Having all of those technical resources there. I see people posting stuff on a Friday night, Saturday morning, and the guys on here are an amazing help. Getting a community together of 650 installers to help each other, to share stories and stuff. That's an amazing resource for you as well as if you're starting out, to jump on there. So you've got confidence that on a Sunday afternoon that someone can on the spot. It's great. So if you're not already part of our group, please join. The group name is Oz Ubiquiti Pros. All right. So
we are already getting members signing in
on the group.
Yeah, I've already had a few requests for new members.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome. So we want to talk about this certification training that Yung will be hosting. I think you're going to, is it Brisbane?
Sydney next week, Monday to Thursday.
Yeah, so we've got Sydney next week, and then
Brisbane
we've
the
got
week afterwards.
So this is a 2-day in-classroom training. You can see there from Melbourne, that was our biggest class. We had 20 students in the UEWA. And you can obtain that certification from Ubiquiti. It allows you to promote your certification to customers. So if you're an integrator and you're trying to push this out to a school or a corporate, being certified gives you credibility. Right? You can then offer the end-to-end consultancy and installation service. That's really important. Having your certification and going through this training and then having the real world hands-on experience with this, you can offer the full service. So you can offer managed services for these customers. Whereas if I'm a reseller and I've only had a bit of experience hands-on in the controller, I haven't done the certification, and I'm not totally confident, I can't offer my customer a managed service contract because then I have to lean on LEADER or our support team all the time. So if that customer calls me with something urgent, I have to wait in the queue or wait for some pre-sales engineering. For you to be able to jump in and offer that pre-sales solution, offer that support on the spot, you are their trusted advisor. Okay, that means everything goes through you. Hardware, software, and support goes through you. That means you can charge them a managed services contract. You are their end-to-end consultant. Okay, it's very important. All right, and you can enhance your managed services portfolio. we've got many examples of resellers, and you can see the numbers there. We've trained 274 Unified Enterprise students and 112 Ubiquiti broadband students in the last 12 months. The majority of these, we can see that in their figures, right? You know, sales is a numbers game, right? These guys that are certified, we can actually see that in the system, and we see that their spend increases 300 to 400%, which means they've taken that knowledge, they've gone out there, they've given their customers confidence, or they've picked up new customers, they've picked up contracts, and they're getting those wins, which means they're selling more. You know, they're getting those contracts, and they, you know, the results are in the numbers. So highly recommend looking at this. The one on the right there, the UBRSS. If you are an advanced installer, you've been using Ubiquiti for a while, you probably are interested in getting your certification. The broadband routing and switching specialist course, you have to be an expert in your field to go and do that course. It is relating to EdgeMax routing, and that is Young's strength. Young came to us, and his hobby is you know, routing tables and you know, configuring routers and load balancing and all that stuff, right?
According to Ben.
This is his hobby. So that he'll be getting that UCT cert very shortly. If anyone's looking to go to the next level, we'll be offering those classes in January. I want to talk about our dedicated support and engineering team, right? This is the thing that sets us apart in Australia as a Ubiquiti distributor. Now, I follow many groups, and not many Ubiquiti distributors do this in the US or other countries, but we believe that this is the number one most important aspect of the business is to offer support, right? So we offer 8x5 remote access via TeamViewer. If you're on site, you're installing a network and you can't configure something, we've actually got 7 engineers now. Any one of those, we have a 10-minute SLA that we have to remotely log in and assist you with that install. Because the last thing you want to do is go on site to that school and sit there and not be able to configure something as basic as an access point or setting up a VLAN or something like that, right? That's why we offer that. We offer phone support as well, both to the reseller and to the school, but we will only speak to the school if the reseller wants us to or has agreed to that's the best way to offer the best support. We do everything through the reseller. We will not speak to a school unless you want us to. And when we do that, we do it we represent Ubiquiti as the vendor, but everything in terms of the business, the pricing and the level of support has to be agreed by the reseller, which is you, okay? And we also offer pre-sales engineering. So when we have a school come to us and they want, say, 200 access points and they want us to spec that up, we have an SLA of about 24 hours on that. So if you need us to actually spec it up and point you in the right direction, we can do that. And then once you've got that deal, once the school goes ahead, we can actually come in, offer you remote access, offer you the phone support and the email support, and this is all free, you know. And have a look at our SLAs there. You know, we have a 5-minute SLA for phone support, 10 minutes for remote TeamViewer access, 30 minutes for email support, and 24 hours for those pre-sale engineering queries, you know. So, you know, I'd like to get some feedback from David, just for everyone in the group. We may have resellers and IT managers from schools here, and I'd like David to just give some feedback on, you know, how have you found the support from LEADER?
Yeah, look, the support from LEADER was good. As I'll talk about later in my slides, we did have some problems, and LEADER was good at either getting in there and finding the solution, or if in the rare event they couldn't, they actually got me in touch with Ubiquiti in America pretty quickly, so we were able to get problems resolved. So yeah, I'd rate it, and I had an agreement with Somerville that they were happy for me to go to LEADER when I needed support.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I just want to go through quickly. I just want to put a name to a face for everyone in this webinar today. So you've got Young there. You know, so Young has 8 years experience. That's his background, his routing, switching. He used to work for Unity Wireless. I mean, you want to give him a background of your experience?
Yeah, sure. And then before that, I came from Commander. Most recently the Commander Center, and then before that at Commander, which before that was into Telecom. Yeah, doing a variety of things from, you know, network operations, started off in help desk support, network operations, a few other things there, but yeah, pretty much Commander, Unity, and here the last 8 years.
We just want to go through Chris as well. Chris has just joined us. If anyone's familiar with Miro, they're the Ubiquiti distributor in South Africa. So Chris actually helped start that business about 15 years ago. Chris is one of the best product managers and one of the most technical people you'll ever meet. So he just joined us about 2 weeks ago. So we have a veteran in the field. He's been doing CCTV, enterprise networking, IoT, 4G, LTE, point-to-point, everything. This guy is a gun. We've got Albert. He is our main support engineer for Unify, AirMax, and EdgeMax. Albert's great. We've got Amble. He's a junior with us. His specialty is routing and switching. Okay. Myself, and then we've also got Andrew, who does backup Unify support and AirMax support. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Yung now, who's going to go through some technical details, and we're going to get, for anyone that hasn't used Unify, we're going to basically just talk about the education solutions. So I'll hand over to Yung.
I'll try not to be too long because I know David wants to get into his stuff too. So firstly, what is Unify? Basically, Unify is SDN, or software-defined networking. So the idea being you've got a central controller, which is basically a piece of software, where you can configure all your devices across your network from one central location, as well as getting reporting and other things. So what kind of features do we get from Unify? Well, in addition to the usual things you'd expect, there's a lot of detailed analytics and deep packet inspection in Unify. So you can get stats overall, per client, time ranges. Also guest networks and captive portals. Really great feature in Unify that a lot of people use. So you can basically set up your own guest portal and have people either make payments or use vouchers or agree to terms and conditions. Facebook Wi-Fi as well. There's a lot of site survey and spectral analysis tools built in, which is really good for site planning. And a lot of the advanced wireless LAN features you need for enterprise, like band steering, load balancing, setting minimum RSSI or signal before booting clients, and wireless uplinks. So what are some of the benefits of Unify? Basically, you've got a single pane of glass from which to manage all of your Unify devices. You can also manage multiple sites from your Unify controller. So if you've got a Unify controller spun up on a VM sitting in a data center, you can run multiple sites from there if you're managing multiple clients. Big one, obviously, as Ben mentioned, save on deployment time. Instead of spending a lot of time trying to script or go in and manually configure devices one by one, set up everything you need in the controller, adopt your devices, and they just get configured. And in addition, there's also free cloud access too. So you can link up your controller to Ubiquiti's free cloud service, which will enable you to access your controller from anywhere around the globe. Uses WebRTC. So let's have a quick look at the product range, starting with routing solutions. So for routing in Unify, we've got the Unify security gateways. All the features you'd expect: QoS, load balancing, failover, dynamic routing, firewall, deep packet inspection. You can also run some of your basic services you might need on these as well, like if you need a radius server for your WPA enterprise. And here we've got, the three models. So on the left, we've got the really basic, and I won't bother going too much into this. We'll get some data sheets out for you at the end of the presentation.
So it's essentially, like, when we look at these three products, we talk about USG, we probably think like, a daycare center or a very small school with 30, 40 students. USG Pro, a mid-sized school with up to 300 students. And then we're talking about the USG XG8. We're talking about a school on the scale of Central Coast Grammar, which, David, we're talking about 1,200 students, okay? So we have something to cater for all different sizes of education here. Yeah.
All right, so a few features in the USGs. Of course, you got firewall and routing. You can do GeoIP filtering. We've got IPS and IDS, which is in beta at the moment. It's a really, just on IPS and IDS, it's a really great example of what Ubiquiti do to like value add. Because, you know, IPS and IDS is something that they've just added as a new feature into the Unify control software. So anyone who's running Unify and Unify security gateways, you know, that they might have bought a year or two ago, can benefit from the extra features that are being added by simply upgrading the software. And of course, there's no licensing or upgrade costs. So yeah, IPS and IDS, basically we've got income protection and intrusion protection and intrusion detection. The only difference between the two is that the detection just does logging and the protection does logging and blocking. So with IPS and IDS, traffic is matched on signatures. So, you know, like botnet, you know, command and control host traffic, shellcode, Trojans, worms. There's lists as well to block hosts, you know, lists of sort of compromised hosts, de-shield lists, spam house, that kind of thing, as well as being able to put rules and filter traffic just on the type of traffic, like chat and game traffic, peer-to-peer stuff, that kind of thing. In switching, all right, we've got a range of switches available. In Unify, basically everything is layer 2 switching, and all the switches have full line rate with non-blocking throughput. So, you know, if you've got 24 gigabit ports, that switch can do 24 gigabits of switching, all right? So yeah, we've got switches, we've got PoE switches, and we've also got the XG16 aggregation switch, which is all, you know, you've got your 12 10 gig SFPs, and then the 4 copper 10 gig ports on there as well. And we'll have a look at, you know, how you might deploy this stuff in the last couple of slides with a few examples. Oh, just a quick word on EdgeMax and Unify. So another of Ubiquiti's product range is the EdgeMax series, which is separate from Unify. I just wanted to touch on this briefly because David will talk about it in his presentation too. But with the EdgeMax range, essentially it's the same hardware in a different chassis, but there are a few differences in the firmware. So with the EdgeMax stuff, you can do a bit of layer 3 stuff like inter-VLAN and static routes, things like that, which you won't be able to do on the Unify. All right. And, you know, with the EdgeMax range, it's more traditional. Each device has its own web interface and is configured independently, although there is UNMS, which they can be linked up to, which is Ubiquiti's network management system for managing all your non-unified devices under a single pane of glass. And there's that question there. David Nichols will touch on that shortly. So APs, all right. You know, main things with Unify, performance, you can scale up as much as you want, the stuff's reliable, and there's a huge range of different form factors to suit any need you want. Plus, you know, it's just a nice, simple design. So, you know, starting off at our base range, we've got in our AC, you know, things like that, the AC light, the in-wall and the mesh. These are all 2x2 MIMO devices. Then we've got the Pro range with your 3x3 MIMO, like the AC Pros. Then in the HDs, that's when we move to AC Wave 2 with our 4x4 MIMO. And of course, they've got the XG access points, which have been introduced as well, which come with, you know, multiple radios and multiple antennas to support even more clients and 10 gig backbone. Alrighty. So let's have a look at a few APs. So for example, the Nano HD, which has been available for the last 3 months, supports 4x4 MIMO. It's essentially a smaller version of the UAP ACHD with a single antenna instead of dual antennas. Supports about half the number of clients as the HD, but you know, it's 238% faster than your AC Pro when you've got 10 devices because of that MoMemo benefit you're getting. So if we were to look at, competitors, now for this example, I'm just looking at the base AP in each competitor that supports 4x4 MoMemo. So, we've got like the Aruba AP310 series, the Cisco 1850 in the Aeronets, Ruckus R710, Aero 5 AP550. You're looking at $800 and up just for the hardware before licensing and other costs. Even if we were to compare this to the standard HD model, the non-nano one, that's recommended retail at $499. So there's still a massive saving there. How does it stack up in terms of performance though? So, if we were to look at the ACHD versus like a R710, Aruba IAP 325 and a Meraki MR52. So on the first graph on the left, you can see they did just a straight TCP download test with 100 clients. And they found the Ubiquiti device performed the best with 349 meg of aggregate throughput, meaning about 3.5 meg for every client with 100 clients on a single AP. Now, what's interesting is that that was in dual mode, so with both 2.4 and 5. What's interesting is that in straight 5 gigahertz mode in the test, the Meraki actually edged out the HD by like 20 meg, but then when they actually did streaming tests with video, they found that the Meraki was absolute rubbish when you were streaming actual video. So they did like a test with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 megabit video streams, MP4, and yeah, the Ubiquiti was far and away the best performer out of those. I'll also distribute the details of that testing after the webinar. And if we have a look at, say, the XG, you can see the benefit that you get from having additional radios. This is compared against the same Ruckus and Aruba AP from the previous test. And we'll include a link to the info for that as well. So looking at another interesting product that Ben was talking about before, the AP-AC EDU. So this one here is basically the AC Pro access point with a built-in speaker/PA solution. What's interesting about this is that there's literally no other options from the competitors that will do this. You won't be able to find an integrated PA and AP in a single unit. And what's cool with the EDUs is that they can be integrated into your existing systems as a SIP extension. So, if you want to do integration between the EDU APs and your PDX, such as 3CX, we can help you get that set up and demo it if you need to. There's also interesting info in the Aldinga Beach case study, which we'll send out at the end of the webinar. We've also got the Unify mesh here. So on the, we've got the Unify, the little one with the rabbit ears there, the AC mesh, and then the large brick there, the AC Mesh Pro. Main difference is 2x2 and 3x3 MIMO. Yeah, there's pretty much no comparison with other vendors in terms of pricing. All their outdoor stuff starts at $1,000 plus. Alrighty, Unify controller. Again, so the Unify controller, it's just free software. You can run the Unify controller on any of your existing infrastructure. It does run on Windows OS X, preference for Linux personally. There's also hardware controller options available. So, if you're doing a deployment and you don't necessarily have, bare metal, you can spin this up on a VM. They've also got the cloud keys available, which are basically like little nuts with a built-in battery, so they can shut down safely, but are powered off PoE. So you can just stick them in your rack and plug them into a switch. And what's great is the Unify controller software is absolutely free. no licensing costs and no cost to get upgrades and new features as they become available. And we've talked about this a little bit, but in case you didn't pick up, Ubiquiti is essentially allergic to the idea of licensing fees. So there are no support fees and there are no licensing fees. And as we mentioned, as feature upgrades become available, all you need to do is install those upgrades to take advantage of them. So let's just have a look at a couple of examples of how you might deploy this. So here we've got our USG XG gateway. We've got 20 gig lag trunking going to our Unify switch. And then we're aggregating 10 gig to all our 48 port PoE switches around the place with our APs running off those. And we've got our servers, as you can see, plugged into our 10 gig copper ports with the Unify controller running on one of those. So in the network at Central Coast Grammar, it looks quite similar, but we've basically just swapped out routing and switching for the EdgeMax gear. So you'll notice, because the ranges are closely related, there is an equivalent product for each one in the Edge switch range. And the main difference being that here you'll be running your Unify controller, which would give you all your details on your APs and controlling wireless networks. But UNMS is where all your switching and routing would reside to control that, essentially. And won't go too much into this. I'll let Dave jump in a sec, but here's a quick diagram of Central Coast Grammar's network, just for switching. So you can see in the core, they've got the Edge Router Infinity, along with a few XG 16 ports for the aggregation, and then they've got PoE switches distributed around the place. And there's a map showing the layout of their APs. And I think it's about time to hand over to Dave.
Yep, Dave, I'm going to make you a presenter. So,
all right.
And you can take over.
Yeah. It tells me to. Yes. Show my main screen. All right, let me start.
There we go.
All right, so we chose to roll out Ubiquiti, obviously, and we did it mainly for saving money for the classroom, because just going to go to the next slide. My primary belief of education is that staff and students do not care what product I run, just that it runs. And the little asterisk there is just because there's always those few little nerds like ourselves that love to know what you're running. But for the most part, the staff and students do not care that I run whatever I run, just that the classroom's working for them to be able to do their learning in. So back before Christmas of last year, I was running a network of HP switching, mostly 1 gig, a few 10 gig links, nothing redundant on HP ProCurve. And I had AeroHive wireless with mixed APs. By that I mean mixed models. I had N and AC wireless. I didn't have 1 AP per room. And we had a few outdoor APs put out, but none of them were actually turned on or working for some reason. So I was asked then to review what we were going to do to replace. The director had been very nice to tell me on my first week that I wasn't just replacing switching, I was replacing wired as well. So I went out and reviewed Cisco, Aruba, AeroHive, and Meraki. And at first I didn't actually review Ubiquiti, but then I was asked to review the Bell systems at the same time. And that's when I found Ubiquiti. I then went into testing mode. I tested Aruba and Meraki very quickly. And I bugged enough people that Ben from LEADER eventually reached out to me and said, if you stop bugging people, I'll send you some Ubiquiti gear to test with. We put that in our A block, replaced all our switches in A block and all our APs, and no one noticed. And that's what Ben was saying, how it was a mixed environment. No one noticed we'd put in there. Actually, the feedback I got was it actually worked better than it had with the AeroHive gear. I didn't bother testing AeroHive because I already had it, and I didn't bother testing Cisco because I was testing Meraki, and I really didn't think Cisco would be in my price range anyway. I then had to throw out all my testing because the teachers wanted wireless presenting in our school. And in our B block, which I'll show you some photos at the end of the slides, We wanted to do multiple streams, up to 4 wireless streams per room, and a double room of 8. And we had chosen Vivi for that product, and it requires 100 megabits per second potentially for every 1080p stream. And that's when I realized I needed a form of load balancing, not based on clients, but based on bandwidth. You can see the pictures of my office there, filled with laptops trying to generate load and streaming different screens. And the bottom picture is just showing Vivi's guide that the amount of bandwidth they potentially require. Which leads me to what I call marketing bullshit. Sorry, Ben, if this offends you. I'm using Ubiquiti as an example here because everyone does. Ubiquiti, for example, say on 2.4 and 5 gig channels combined, you can get a total of 1750 megabits per second, but yet they only give you 1,000 megabits bandwidth. And that comes down to, how much channels you can use, what bandwidth you can use. There's more information on this guy's site down the bottom here, which gives a lot of information how to do it. But basically, I call it the marketing bullshit because everyone does it. They'll say you'll get 2 gig throughput on an AP, but then they'll put a 1 gig port on there. And that comes down just to your spatial streams. At the end of the day, I run 40 meg channels. 40 meg channels at a 2x2 stream, I will get between 300 and 400 megabits per second. And as you can see, I needed potentially up to 100 megabits per second per stream, potentially. And I was going to have 4 in a room. So I was going to be in a world of hurt if I just went with a single AP. And that means a lot of testing. I think it was Ty from LEADER who eventually found the trick for me with Ubiquiti, which is what I call load balancing over bandwidth / channel utilization. You can see here that it has on the 3 sections where I've got 5 clients on one AP, 15 on another, or 4 to 16, or 7 to 13. But if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see my channel utilization never changed. My channel utilization stayed the same across both APs. And that's because what it was doing was moving the clients around so that I didn't have, 10 on each AP, but on one of those APs, 4 of the clients were doing the wireless streaming because that would have caused it to fall over. And that was a big thing for me, and it was a great feature that thankfully Ty helped me set up in Ubiquiti. Because when you're looking at wireless video presenting, 1-to-1 is 100 megabits. A single AP will be generally fine. You might see a bit of artifacts or shuddering in high-speed action scenes. 1-to-4 with Vivi is the same as 1-to-1 because the Vivis actually mirror the image to each 4 in its group across the LAN, not as 4 individual wireless streams. But when I'm talking 4-to-4, one AP just won't cope. And I saw that. It would try and struggle, and eventually everything would just fail because this is what I needed to make it look. So as you can see, I had, I put 2 APs in a room, 4 Vivis, and then I've got 4 clients, each playing their own high def content. They don't watch movies in the classroom, so I've been told. That's just because I like pretty pictures. And that allows the 2 APs to keep all them working. And I've got a building where this is working, every day of the week. The kids are using it and using it quite a lot. So the results of my testing were Cisco and AeroHive were out because of pricing. They were just too expensive for me. Meraki didn't work well with 2 APs and multiple wireless streams. And when I spoke to their engineering team, they said, sorry, not interested in that feature. Aruba and Ubiquiti were pretty much the same in terms of performance. Obviously, there are different features they do, but in the end, Aruba's downfall was its pricing. Ubiquiti was the winner purely based on the fact that its price and it gave me the features I needed for my school, and the no licensing or support costs helped that as well, because although we lease on a 3-year rotation, the fact that I know I can keep it for as long as I want without ever having to pay any more than my initial upfront cost was a real winner for us. Very quick review before I go to what we order. As Yung said, EdgeSwitch and Unify look exactly the same. They are, even the internals are exactly the same, but their hardware is different. Unify will only do things on a controller. It has a backup CLI and it's layer 2 only. When I say backup CLI, if your controller is down, you can SSH into it and make commands, but you have to go back and make those commands in the controller when you've got your controller back online, or the next time they restart, they'll pull down the new settings from the controller, unless I'm mistaken on that. Yung will tell me if I am. The EdgeSwitch has layer 3, so layer 2 and layer 3, that's what I mean by advanced features. It's independent control based on SSH or GUI. I think Telnet's on there as well, but I disable that. And it does use UNMS for some of its features, but not everything. So we then placed an order. We bought 130 EDUs, 15 high densities, 10 pros, 10 outdoors, 50 switches, and 16 XG16s, which are the fiber switches. And you can see some pretty pictures of it all arriving. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, it's still the single largest Ubiquiti project tender in Australia of the combined AP and switches?
You're number 2 now.
I'm number 2. I'm actually happy that I've lost that title because it means more people are using it. The cost was dramatically less than any other vendor, and we're talking savings in the 6 figures for grammars, but I can't release the actual figures. On a quick side note, because I said Aruba was the other product we heavily looked at, part of that was we wanted ClearPass. After I chose Ubiquiti, I called Somerville and asked, was it possible to get ClearPass? Aruba actually sent out a ClearPass engineer who spent the day with me figuring out how to do it. But in the end, it was too high of a cost for me, because unlike licensing concurrent users, I would have had to license all active users at any time. That was 9 months ago. Maybe it's better now, but I have a lot of school supplied devices that I didn't need to have ClearPass set up. We then got to our replacement. Again, this is more because I like pretty pictures. We had our old rack filled with HP 8200. I put in a bunch of new edge switch and wired it all up. It was actually a pretty simple rollover, but it did take me a day and a bit. Not because the product wasn't good, but because my ISP disabled my internet halfway through the upgrade and didn't tell me even when I called and asked them. So that was the only delay there. Other than that, it went pretty smoothly. Which moves on to the APs I ordered from my 70 or 80% of the campus, which is the EDU AP. It does look nice. It looks very nice. It is a struggle to mount though, especially in some of my older buildings that are all brick. Ceiling spaces are fine, just cut a big hole, and I do mean a big hole in your roof. But beams and concrete, not as easy to do. That's actually my electrician's temporary mounting solution. He used Velcro straps. So we went out and designed an enclosure, which if anyone wants, I can share the build for this, but it was pretty simple. Round box, no holes in it whatsoever other than where the AP gets mounted into. And then we just drill holes through it to mount it to the roof or glue it in case of the beam. And then we just drill a hole wherever the cable needs to come in. And that way we can keep it looking nice and clean. And yes, one of my help desk guys likes wearing it as a hat. Which then leads me to the few issues I've had. The first 3 issues, the last one is just some quirks I deal with. So we had a routing table failure, a core cable in design that had to be redone, and radar false detections, which was the big issue I faced. So we originally had an XG16 as our core, and it just wasn't powerful enough. After a few hours of troubleshooting with LEADER and then Ubiquiti, they actually advised the best solution would to get an edge router Infinity sent out. And it was Ben who actually, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, called around all the places he could find in Sydney until he found an edge router Infinity in stock and Ubered it up to me that day, and it was here within 4 hours. So that was a great example of LEADER and when needed Ubiquiti working together to get me great support so that I could fix my problem, because before that I was getting dropped packets and long ping responses. Once we put the edge router Infinity in, which as you can see the specs there is a beast, all my pings went down to the standard sub-millisecond response times and ran fine. And because I'd never used edge router, which has a different config, one of their engineers from America actually connected in and helped me configure it out so that it was perfectly set up for our network. My core design issues was a very simple one. In the end, very simple, and it came down to lack of planning, really. Originally, we were going to do everything in a ring type design, as in the first one, where all the XG16s would connect to the one below it and then the one at the bottom back up to the top, which would allow any of them to fail and not really take down the network, or not create a single point of failure in the core. The problem with that was, though, I was getting spanning tree issues, and it just wasn't working properly. I actually reached out to, I can't remember if it was LEADER or Ubiquiti first at this point, but one of them, and said, well, how about we plug everything into the new edge router Infinity? It's, a big shiny powerful box, and got told very quickly, don't do that. It's not really designed for that. Great as a router, not great as your switching core. So we went with design 3, which was my XG16-7, was actually a spare one we had bought in case we needed it. we turned that into what I call my switch core. So everything comes into my routing core in terms of the internet connection, then connects to the switch core, and all my XG16s connect then to that switch core, and that's what creates my core network. Sorry, I didn't mean to say the URLs at the bottom here are links to my site where I've detailed in a lot more, put in a lot more detail what I've done on these slides. Then we get to the big issue we had, which was the radar false detections. We needed 40 megahertz channels for the required bandwidth, which meant I needed to use DFS channels due to the density of my IPs. I couldn't do it any other way. We were getting a number of false detections a day, sometimes in the order of 10 false detections. And when that happens, the AP sends out a signal to say, I'm changing channels, it swaps channels, and then the clients should connect to the new channel. I had two problems. One, the clients weren't getting the right details. I believe it was actually a Dell driver fault, but it was still a problem. And because my channels was, my APs are so densely populated, sometimes it was picking the same channel as the AP next to it to connect to, which would then cause co-channel interference. It did take 2 weeks to get a workaround. It was probably the worst part of this issue. In the end, it took me opening up my network to Ubiquiti. They actually got VPN access and opened access to all my switches and APs, so they could go onto a big investigation into it and find the issue. They actually shipped me 4 SHP APs that have great antennas in them to spot what's happening on your airwaves. And they asked me to put them in certain areas of the school. They also built a Faraday cage at their support office in America. They had wanted one for a while, and apparently I was a good enough reason for them to finally build it. And because of all that, and you can see, sorry, they filled it with a whole bunch of APs and switches to mirror my environment. And because of that, they were able to find the fix, and they put the fix in place in May. And since then, I might see maybe 1-2 jumps a week, which is acceptable to me. And they're probably actual radar detections there, but it's not impacting my users. And lastly, I just want to mention in terms of issues such quirks is quirks I've had with eSwitch. When they came, they were on version 1.7.0. A few of my switches, when I went to put them on 1.7.4 or 1.8, would develop. You can see on the ping responses up here, they would, drop, kind of get 10 packets through, drop 10 packets, get 10 packets through, drop 10 packets. Turned out what we needed to do, and Ubiquiti helped me do this, was these places used 1 gig, 100 meg or 1 gig ports. We had to manually set them to the speed they required before we upgraded them to the new version. Why it was doing it, no idea. Since they've been done that way, I can actually change them now and they're fine. Sorry, that was meant to be 1,000 megabits per second, not 100. So again, it's just a little bug, but again, Ubiquiti helped me out. And the only other problem I still deal with, because that screenshot on the bottom one was taken today, every now and then a edge switch will lose its management interface and it goes offline, no GUI or SSH. Even the serial connection will fail after you type in one command. Restarting it does fix it. There are community posts how Ubiquiti are currently working on that and trying to figure out what's causing that now. Again, it doesn't actually cause any issues because even when it happens, the switches are still working, nothing drops. It just means I can't do VLAN changes while that's happening. I had good problems though, and these are the problems I like. I ran out of student addresses in our first week of term 1 this year when everything was up and running, because students were connecting more and more of their devices every day. We averaged 1,300 to 1,700 daily devices and about 500 to 800 gigabit of daily traffic. Example of an area on my oval I've set up where you can see I'm sitting at this point of the triangle. I'm between, each AP is either 150 odd, 210 or 140 meters away from me, and I'm still getting 33.17 megabit per second download speed, which is to me great. Most of my parents are probably going to be sitting along here. So the cricket conveners do sit down here when they're playing a game of cricket, and they really wanted to have wireless coverage so they could do it online and not with bits of paper. And it costs about $800 here, and that's just going off general, Googling the model of the AC Mesh Pro's price. So it's not even probably the education price, and it's definitely not the reseller price. I wouldn't know that detail. And then Steve Walton from Woodcroft College called me the other day and sent me these photos, an example of him playing with Ubiquiti. On the red dot there, you can see about almost 230 meters away, he put an AP, and he's sitting there streaming YouTube without a problem, and that's just a single AC mesh. They're under $300, I think, even just online pricing again. And he was happy for me to show that. Another example of great cost effective, with that scenario in mind, I didn't have to have everything else I had. I could just have that. By that, it was 1 unit, or in my case, those 3 units, and I'd be able to use that product because of the no licensing or support add-ons. Just showing you some pretty pictures of my controller and how I've set up the walls in there to show me my 2G and 4G, or inside 5 gig, how the radios go, because they're actually walls I've put in here. It lets you pick whether they're brick or gyprock or glass. Same here with my building, and then just the outside 2.4 spectrum coverage we're getting. I take it with a grain of salt how far, but they do stretch pretty far. I'm a fan of the Unified iOS and UMMS iOS apps. There are Android ones as well, for those of you that don't use a better phone. And they give me great specs when I'm walking around the campus, or just when I'm at home, or off-site, and someone asks me for support, I can look up details that I need to help them troubleshoot. The UNMS console that I'm running on my system, which is a pretty good bit of software, especially considering the fact it's technically still labeled alpha. The only problem I have with this is the top one here is an edge switch. You really only see latency output, CPU, and port statistics. You get a lot more control in an edge router, and hopefully soon they'll bring that type of control into the edge switch, because at the moment you can't make VLAN changes on a edge switch device in UNMS. You have to do that on there either via CLI or GUI. I'm in favor of network design, network monitoring, and this is just a couple of the Ubiquiti metrics I can pull into Grafana. Again, my URL down the bottom there will take you to my guides of how I've set all this up, and I push these pages all around the IT office so people can see what's happening and know when there's a potential problem. I'm also testing Libra NMS as another way to do Ubiquiti metrics. It does a nice little network map there automatically. It even tracked which port is doing which. The only downside, I added switches into it, and I don't have it open now, but it actually went crazy and added, everything started connecting to everything else because it couldn't understand where the APs were connected. That's not a Ubiquiti fault, but it still gives great metrics even when you're looking at the right-hand side pictures and what each switch is doing, and its throughput and utilization, even temperature information for the switches and APs. This is an example of one of our B block rooms where we renovated and installed the Ubiquiti APs to give us the Vivi streaming. So they're my setup. This is where, to me, saving money with using something like Ubiquiti worked out. I would not have been able to put Vivi in all these places if I hadn't have gone something like Ubiquiti, because the level of design in this building is crazy. All the walls actually have copper mesh behind them to allow for the number of APs we installed and the bandwidth required. Again, the link there will give you more info in terms of exactly what we did and how we did it. Because people like seeing network topologies, I've just got 2 pictures here. One is just similar to the one Yung had, which is my layout of all my core switches and then the different buildings around the school. And this one actually is tracking every single port uplink and where it goes to, so that when my guys have to troubleshoot something, or I know which port plugs into which. And my last picture is just an example of showing the amount of APs I've put out. So each cluster of APs there is sitting next to the switch they're actually plugged into. As you can see, my B block actually has the highest concentration of APs because that's where I've put 2 APs per room to allow for that required bandwidth. So my conclusions on my last slide is that we saved money with a calculated risk on Ubiquiti. And by calculated, I mean I spoke to people like Bennett, LEADER, who showed me their support team and showed me that the concept of no support with Ubiquiti, I don't think was true. I've had support. I was able to save money and put that money back into teaching, into the classroom. We did save 6 figures, a lot of 6 figures, to allow us to roll out something like Vivi. And if we hadn't been rolling out Vivi, we could have even used that money then to get another teacher in the school or more help desk staff in the IT department. Because going back to my initial statement, staff and students don't care about what brand you buy, just that it runs. I've not had anyone come to me and say, are you running Cisco or Ubiquiti? They just don't care. And that's it for me.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, David. We do apologise. We got a lot of questions while the webinar was going, and we're just going to go through these one by one. We had Alpha. saying, how do you perform a heat map before purchasing product? Or how do you, how do you do like a site survey without having the devices connected to control it? There is actually it's called unstable-demo.ubnt.com. If you go there, you have a version of the SDN, which is an online free version where you can actually insert products by selecting their product name. So you can insert ACLRs, Pros, Nanos, EDUs, place them on a map, accurately create a heat map with a floor plan that you've provided, and we'll send that around to everyone a bit later on.
Alternately, you can always download the controller software, just install it on your local machine and use that as well.
Daryl Bourne asks, is the Leader Academy already live? Yes, it is. We'll send that around to everyone that attended. We had a question from Trevor Hardy. It would be great to have a forum portal linked to the Leader website where resellers can participate and ask questions. Trevor, that's where we actually utilize the Facebook page. So we actually prefer to use the Facebook page as our forum because it just offers people faster answers for questions. It's more structured that way.
Reseller, yeah. So it is mostly resellers in our Facebook group.
Yeah,
it is a closed group, so we don't just let everyone join.
Yeah.
And we'll send you the link if you don't already have that afterwards, so you can get connected.
Yeah. Okay. We had a few people saying they can't get audio. Where do we send feature requests for Unify? If you send that through to ubnt-support@leadersystems.com.au, our support team will relay that to the Ubiquiti engineers overseas.
Also, just on that too, if you jump on the Ubiquiti forums and Google for search for feature requests, there's actually an entire forum for each of the product suites dedicated to putting in feature requests, and they'll mark feature requests as accepted or in progress or completed. So if you want to know if a certain feature has already been requested and whether it's on the development track, do a search there first.
Okay, we had Samuel Gauchi. Is VLAN support offered on all models of USGs?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Jonathan, is there any news on 802.11ax? Not at this stage. Generally, Ubiquiti, releasing AX at this stage without, devices that support it would be like a rush to market. So Ubiquiti tend to take their time and get the product perfect, make sure the price is right. Trying to go to market first with AX means the cost is going to be very, very high. There's not many supported devices out there, But we'll obviously let everyone know. Why is it? We had Shane Lee say, why is it called a Nano? The reason it's called a Nano is because it's 30% smaller than the AC Pro, but it actually performs 238% faster with 10 clients. We had Stephen Turner. Are there any details about the new #1 deployment? I can't share that information because it was a government contract, so I can't share details about that. If you didn't go for ClearPass, are you just using plain old NPS and EAP, PEAP, or something more fancy? David, do you want to answer that one?
So our clients all connect based on radius authentication to a Windows NPS server. We don't actually do an onboarding yet. I am building the Ubiquiti one in though, but I found a small bug in it, which I'm working with Ubiquiti Techs to fix.
Okay.
And that bug's just related to how I built my system. It's not a bug on all their guest portals.
All right. We had Russell saying, will the webinar be published anywhere? Yes, we've recorded this. We'll be saving this and uploading it to both the Leader Academy as well as the Facebook page. Just to clarify with the Facebook page, only resellers, integrators, installers can actually get into that if they have a Leader account. So we actually qualify people that want to join. We had about 7 people joining. Because you provided your Leader reseller code and your account manager's name, that's why we actually accepted. We do get a lot of requests for people in Indonesia and overseas, but we want to just keep it as an Australian reseller group. There's a lot of groups out there with thousands of people. We want it to be a local group with local resource, like local community type group, okay?
There's the Unified Professionals official group, which has a bit wider spec that's global.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, Darryl said, can I get a copy of the webinar? Yes, we'll send that around. We will also turn this into a PDF and send that to you. So you can use this when you go and present to your clients, okay? So if you want a copy of the actual PowerPoint to do any modifications, add your logo, whatnot, let us know. We'll put that on a Dropbox for you and send that to everyone that attended, okay?
Okay. So David's asked, can you manage a remote AP without using the USG? So yes, the USG is just the router in the Unified Product Suite. The controller doesn't actually run on the USG. The controller is just software. So it could just be installed on like a Windows machine if there was one locally that's on. Now the controller doesn't actually have to be running for the access points to work. It's only needs to be running when you make config changes or if you're wanting to be able to take advantage of the reporting. Of course, if the controller's not on, it's not going to be able to collect the stats. You can spin up a controller on a VM, off-site, and you can actually do management via layer 3. So you can give the AP, a fully qualified domain name pointing at that controller and control it that way. In addition, if it was just a single AP and you don't want to collect stats and you're just going to set it up with one SSID and a pre-shared key, you can actually configure it with the app and not even use the controller. So there is a mobile app and you can configure APs individually using that. I hope that answers the question.
Stephen, have you had any interest from the larger education systems in most UBT success at the moment? Single. Yeah, so we're actually trying to get Ubiquiti on the SA education board as an approved vendor. That is in progress at the moment. There's a lot of hurdles that you need to jump. There's a lot of stuff you need to do to actually get approved. You need officers in the state with local support people, and that's why we've expanded our support team to try and get that. There's other requirements in terms of technical details, vendor representation, and things like that. We're working through that step by step to actually become an approved vendor for public schools. Richard said, will the online training portal be made available again? Richard, I'll clarify that with you afterwards. I'll clarify that. Justin Collins said,
Richard might be referring to Ubiquiti's the old online trainings that they.
Yeah, they're working on a new version of the interactive online training portal for Unified. That's not available yet, but I believe it's going to be released before Christmas. Okay. We had a question from Darryl. How do you configure the guest portal to show the controller host name instead of the controller's IP address?
The guest portal to show the controller. Oh, that's not something I've done before, but I'd be happy to follow up on that and find out for you. I know that you can use a completely separate solution for the portal and, essentially send your clients there, just have a list of addresses that they're able to contact till they're authenticated or whatever. So yeah, we should be able to do that, but let's pick that up over email and we'll get you an answer.
We had,
And yeah, as for having a cloud key, it should make no difference. Just think of the cloud key as being like a basic NUC that's running Debian with the Unified controller on it.
I'm trying to speak to the IT. All right, cool. We've answered all those questions. If anyone's got any other questions, can you put your hand up in the software and we'll let you jump in and let us know if there's any hands up. All right, all good. We'll wrap this up and we'll get the recording done. Thanks everyone for attending. If you've got any questions afterwards, please reach out to our support team. We've got Young, Albert, myself, Anvil, Andrew, Chris, and we're more than happy to help you with any opportunities you've got. We'll provide you as much resources and as much training as possible to help you guys go out there. And also, if we've got any schools on the line, obviously we do reach out to us via your preferred reseller. We'd be more than happy to, be in between to actually help you build a solution and work with your reseller to get a solution going once interest. So we'll wrap it up there. And look, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate everyone giving up their afternoon.
And a special thanks to David for being able to come and talk about his experiences as well. Thanks for coming.
Not a problem.
We had Robbie, the dates in ACT. We'll publish that and put it on the Facebook page. We had Sam Gauchi. Do LEADER get any leads directly from customers? We do, but then we refer it back to a reseller. We ask them, who's your preferred integrator? Who have you dealt with? Then we reach out to that reseller. We provide the reseller the details.
And usually we would prefer a reseller who's got certification if the client didn't have a preference.
All right, excellent. No worries, all good. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, please, if you're not on the Facebook community, please do join. Reach out to us at any time if you need anything.
I've got everyone's emails. I'll send out the links and contact information. So if there's any questions you didn't get in, don't panic. You'll have something in your inboxes in the next hour.
All right, great. All right, thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.